Welcome everyone, Croeso. I'm really delighted to welcome you to this event here today on gender and Brexit. It's an incredibly important time in the Brexit process as David Davis, the recently ex-Secretary of State for exiting the EU, said on the Andrew Marr show a couple of weeks ago. The UK government now has a reasonably clear negotiating position, and so negotiations have intensified between the UK government and the EU side. And that makes this a critically important time to inject discussion of gender issues into this wider debate. It's critically important that that happens now. That's not to say that gender shouldn't have been a key part of the debate over a longer term, and I think one of the issues we'll be discussing is how far that was or wasn't the case in the past. These are critically important issues. I say was or wasn't the case. I guess there I'm talking about the sort of Westminster-focused elite political debate. I'm very much aware that there are ongoing and rich debates and discussions across the UK in civil society organizations, amongst academics, in networks predominantly of women considering these sorts of issues. And we've drawn, I hope, on those rich networks and sets of experts and people involved in the Brexit process in putting together this event. So I'm delighted that we're now able to link up that range of work with the UK in a Changing Europe platform. UK in a Changing Europe, as I hope many of you will know, is a platform funded by the Economic and Social Research Council with the objective of getting a diverse range of voices and of evidence and analysis and expertise largely from the universities and into various levels of debate. So into high-level policy debates, into political debate, but also into the media and mass publics. And I can say, because I've only very recently joined this endeavor, that UK in a Changing Europe, I think, has done a remarkably effective job in bringing academics out of their ivory towers and into public debate in various kinds of ways. I say I've recently joined UK in a Changing Europe. My role is as a kind of research coordinator for UK in a Changing Europe, but I'm also putting together a new set of projects, a new program funded by the ESRC under the heading of Governance After Brexit, the idea of which is to try alongside UK in a Changing Europe to develop and support research which engages with Brexit, but engages with it set in a longer term perspective, or looking at kind of fundamental issues that not necessarily issues caused by Brexit itself, but issues that are entwined with the Brexit debates and Brexit issues, and that will be affected sometimes fundamentally by the way that the UK's relationship with the European Union changes in quite basic ways. So that program of research, I hope, will add a new dimension to the kind of work being done in sort of academic think tank type mode by UK in a Changing Europe. So on to today's debate. You can hardly talk about Brexit without discussing, leave and remain, without discussing the seemingly stark divide between people who are enthusiastic about the UK leaving the European Union and people who regret it, or perhaps want to reverse it. Those kinds of dimensions and issues, I'm sure, will be an important aspect of what we have to discuss today. But kind of in the spirit of the governance after Brexit idea, I'm also very keen that we don't get entirely obsessed with that leave-remain opposition. It seems to me that there is a host of issues, particularly issues around gender, which will need to be addressed, confronted, considered, whatever the outcome of the next 6 months or even the next 2.5 years. And it's vital, I think, that we start engaging with those sorts of issues and themes early and fully. And I hope that our discussions today will be part of that process, will make a contribution to that process looking forward. So in today's discussion, we have 4 panels. The first panel will look at the place of gender, or perhaps questions around how prominent the place of gender has been in debates around Brexit up until now. So that has an element of looking at where we've come from in it, although it will also try and set those discussions in a broader perspective. We then go on to talk about economic issues in relation to gender, and there's a rich vein of research about the connections between austerity and gender issues. There are critical issues, I think, about the fiscal implications of Brexit and how those play out for men and women. Important issues about employment across a range of different sectors that we can engage. Also questions about trade. What are the new opportunities that may come to the UK after Brexit, and how might those play out in terms of gender patterns? After lunch, we then go on to consider a kind of diverse range of experiences of the Brexit process. Diverse in a number of different ways. So the UK is a devolved political system. England, the largest country, is governed by UK-wide institutions, but in the other 3 parts of the UK, there are devolved institutions, each of which has its own set of engagements with gender, its own policy approaches around gender issues, and we're going to discuss how those come together. There's also, I think, a bit of a sense sometimes that that the kind of image of the archetypical Leave voter in the referendum is of a kind of working class white man from a sort of smaller, more deprived or disadvantaged kind of a place. And I think it's also important that we interrogate questions about predominantly Leave voting areas and the kinds of people, the kinds of lived experience of those areas as well. And I hope that'll be part of our debate in that session. And then there are questions about how gender issues intersect with experiences of race and class and race in inverted commas, minority ethnic experiences. We talk about gender. There can be a range of different gender positions, and there are questions around sexuality, which can also feed into the diversity of experience of Brexit. Then our final session very much tries to look forward, so taking that spirit of the prospects ahead of us, interrogating questions about what happens to equality rights looking forward, thinking about what might happen to politics across the UK as we look forward. So that range of issues, I think, are the ones that I very much hope we're able to at least start to discuss in the context of the UK in a Changing Europe Forum. I'm delighted to welcome you to this event, and I very much look forward to our discussions today. Thank you for coming.